In February 2026, the United States Department of Justice did something extraordinary. They released over 3 million pages of documents to the public. Police reports, FBI diagrams, victim testimonies, photographs, emails, spanning 20 years. What these documents revealed wasn't just the story of one criminal, but a web of relationships that connected people across the entire world. From the trading floors of Wall Street to the tech campuses of Silicon Valley, from the White House to Buckingham Palace, from Nobel Prize committees in Norway to government offices in Tel Aviv. This isn't a conspiracy theory. Every single fact I'm about to share with you comes from official investigations, court records and documents released by law enforcement agencies, and at the center of it all is one question that should disturb every one of us. How did a convicted sex offender continue to have dinner with presidents, advise politicians, and attend exclusive gatherings with some of the most powerful people on Earth? Let me start with what we know for certain. Jeffrey Epstein's name first appeared in a police report in March 2005, when a family in Palm Beach, Florida, reported that their 14-year-old daughter had been sexually abused at his mansion. What should have been a straightforward criminal case became something far more complicated. Federal investigators eventually identified at least 36 victims, some as young as 14 years old. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges and served just 13 months in jail, much of it on work release, meaning he could leave during the day. But here's where the simple story ends and the disturbing questions begin. The documents released over the past 2 years show something that challenges everything we think. We know about accountability and justice. They show former presidents staying at his properties years after his conviction. They show tech billionaires attending dinners he organized. They show cabinet members, ambassadors, scientists, and even people who ran the Nobel Peace Prize Committee maintaining contact with him. Now, appearing in these documents doesn't automatically mean someone did anything wrong. Many of these people have strongly denied knowing about his crimes. But what the documents do show us is perhaps even more troubling. They show how someone with enough money and the right connections could continue moving through the highest circles of power, even after being labeled a sex offender. For years, bits and pieces of the Epstein story leaked out through court cases and journalism. But in January 2024, a judge decided to unseal over 900 pages of documents from a lawsuit filed years earlier. People around the world started seeing names they recognized. Then, in January 2026, the floodgates opened. Millions of pages. The FBI had been sitting on mountains of evidence, and now the public could finally see what investigators had known for years. The FBI diagrams alone were shocking. Imagine trying to map out a criminal operation on a giant chart. One diagram showed timelines of when different victims were abused, creating a visual representation of systematic exploitation that went on for years. Another document mentioned something called Unnamed Investor Number 1 and lists of potential witnesses who could have cooperated with investigators, but apparently never did. These were breadcrumbs of investigations that, for reasons we still don't fully understand, never went anywhere. What happened next revealed something fascinating about how different parts of the world respond to scandal. In Europe, the consequences were swift and brutal. Peter Mandelson, a powerful British politician who had been serving as the UK ambassador to Washington, was fired. Emails showed him calling Epstein "my best pal" and revealed suspicious money transfers between them. In Slovakia, the national security advisor resigned after emails surfaced where he discussed gorgeous girls with Epstein. A Swedish official who worked for the United Nations quit after people discovered she devisited Epstein's private Caribbean island in 2012. Norway even opened a corruption investigation into their former prime minister, a man who once led the committee that awards the Nobel Peace Prize. But in America, the response was completely different. Despite thousands of pages documenting connections between Epstein and prominent Americans, almost no one faced serious professional consequences. Politicians stayed in office. Business leaders remained at the helm of their companies. Scientists kept their positions. As one legal expert put it, Epstein collected powerful people the way some people collect airline miles. But now, everyone could see the receipts. And it turned out a lot of people had been flying first class on Jeffrey S. airline for a very long time. Now we need to talk about something more complicated, And I want to be very careful here to separate what we know for certain from what people speculate about. What we know as documented fact is this: Epstein maintained close relationships with intelligence and defense officials from several countries. The documents show he met with Ehud Barak, a former Israeli prime minister, and defense minister more than 30 times between 2013 and 2017, leaked emails, which independent journalists have verified as authentic. Epstein setting up meetings for Barak with American tech leaders and even people connected to Vladimir Putin's inner circle. Between 2012 and 2014, documents reveal that Epstein helped Barak with security projects in an African country called Ivory Coast. He arranged meetings at the United Nations, connected Barak with government officials there, helped set up communications with the president's family. Former Israeli intelligence officers were hired to create plans for monitoring phone calls and internet activity across the entire country. Whether Epstein was doing this out of friendship, business interest, or something else entirely remains unclear. Here's where it gets even stranger. Banks are required by law to report suspicious transactions to the government. Between 2002 and 2016, J.P. Morgan Chase, one of America's biggest banks, filed reports flagging unusual activity in Epstein's accounts. 73 of these reports were filed before Epstein was even arrested in 2006. The bank reported over $1 million in payments from Epstein to girls and women, many with Eastern European names. Despite sending all these alerts to federal law enforcement, not a single federal agency contacted the bank or indicated they were investigating anything. Think about that for a moment. The alarm bells were ringing for 14 years, and nobody picked up the phone. After Epstein died, J.P. Morgan filed another report about approximately $1 billion in transactions involving some of the richest men in America. In 2020, the Department of Justice released a report examining how badly they'd handled the case. The lead prosecutor, a woman named Marie Villafara, publicly said the system had failed because of deep biases about gender and social class. The victims were teenage girls who didn't fit comfortable stereotypes, so they weren't taken seriously enough. This brings us to the question that should keep us all up at night. Jeffrey Epstein was a college dropout who briefly worked as a high school math teacher. He had no Ivy League degree, no famous family name, no obvious credentials. So how did he end up having dinner with presidents, advising political campaigns, and attending the most exclusive gatherings in the world? The simple answer people give is money. Epstein positioned himself as a financial advisor to billionaires, most famously Leslie Wexner, the man who owned Victoria's Secret. Wexner gave Epstein complete control over his entire fortune, which was worth billions of dollars. But money alone doesn't explain it. Plenty of people have money. What Epstein had was something more valuable. He was a connector. Think of it this way. Two scientists. Epstein offered access to billionaires who could fund their research. To billionaires, he promised introductions to world leaders and exclusive intellectual gatherings. To politicians, he provided connections to both wealthy donors and innovative thinkers. He was the bridge between worlds that normally don't touch. In one email to Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former advisor, Epstein casually wrote that he could organize private meetings with leaders of entire countries. He advised Bannon on a political tour of Europe, claiming he'd just spoken with several heads of state. The emails reveal something else crucial. Epstein understood compartmentalization. Each person in his network knew a different version of him. Scientists like Noam Chomsky, who admitted to extensive communication with Epstein after his conviction, saw him as a patron of intellectual pursuits. Tech entrepreneurs saw him as a fellow futurist. All politicians saw him as a potential donor and advisor. Business executives saw him as a financial consultant. And here's the key. He offered each group access to the others. There's something else we need to confront. Once you've been photographed shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers, those photographs become currency. Each connection validates the next. Richard Branson, the billionaire who owns Virgin Airlines, invited Epstein to his private island in 2013, years after the conviction. The message Branson sent said, "As long as you bring your harem." In retrospect, that comment should make your stomach turn. But it reveals how some people separated Jeffrey the networker from Jeffrey the criminal in their minds. The Epstein case isn't really about one man's crimes anymore. It's become a test of whether our systems actually work the way we're told they do. Think about everything that had to fail at the same time for this to continue for 20 years. Banks had to ignore their own red flags. Prosecutors had to choose protecting a powerful defendant over protecting teenage victims. Journalists had pieces of the story but couldn't break through the wall of lawyers and non-disclosure agreements. And social circles full of supposedly smart, ethical people had to decide that access and networking were more important than basic moral standards. There's a tragic footnote to this story that we can't ignore. In April 2025, Virginia Giuffre died by suicide. She was 41 years old. Virginia was one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, and she spent years fighting to bring his crimes into the light. While we sit here analyzing power structures and geopolitics, we need to remember that real people's lives were destroyed. The victims weren't abstract concepts in a legal case. They were daughters, sisters, human beings whose trauma doesn't end just because the criminal is dead. As of today, in February 2026, only 2 people have ever been charged with crimes connected to Epstein and everything these millions of pages reveal. Jeffrey Epstein himself, who died in jail in 2019, and Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently serving 20 years in prison. Nobody else. Not the people who helped him. Not the people who looked the other way. Not the institutions that failed to act on clear warning signs for over a decade. The impact continues, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Careers ended in Europe, investigations ongoing in multiple countries, reputations permanently stained. But the deeper questions remain unanswered. How do our justice systems treat powerful people versus powerless teenagers? What responsibilities do we have when we choose who to associate with? What about the institutions that are supposed to protect the vulnerable? In July 2025, the Justice Department said Epstein never kept a client list and they wouldn't release any more files. But Congress passed a law in November, forcing more transparency. The documents are out there now, millions of pages of evidence. They don't just show us crimes, they show us a system that failed, repeatedly for 2 decades. The question isn't just how one man did this. The real question is, what are we going to change to make sure it never happens again?